everyone. Welcome back. It's Monday morning, and Cari and I are so excited to be here hosting another episode of Leveling Up Mastery Monday with you here at EXP University. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching us on YouTube, because there's so much amazing content that's being put out through EXP University several times a week, and we don't want you to miss out. So make sure that you're liking and subscribing.
Yes.
And also remember, if you missed us on YouTube, no big deal. Check us out in Workplace under EXP University, because we are live streaming there. And right, Cari, once it's live streamed, it's there for a while, so you can go back and rewatch.
Yes, and you can comment and make sure you tag us so we see the comments so we can reply.
Absolutely. So today we are going to be actually talking about resilience in entrepreneurship, because this is something that Cari and I have been working with so many of our clients on, how to stay resilient, how to continue to stay positive in a market or even in your life when there's some uncertainty or there's some shift happening. How can we take something that is stressful and look at stress through a different lens, a different way of thinking that can actually help empower you rather than disempower you. So we're going to be going through 6 different strategies in which you can become more resilient as an entrepreneur. So Cari, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, it's so interesting because when you hear the word stress, most people are like, oh, that is a bad thing, right? Mm-hmm. We gave a bad connotation and a bad feeling to a word, but stress can be actually a really good thing. And I just want to give an example for many of you who are at EXP, I know, and maybe some of you watching on YouTube as well. You've heard about the 75 Hard Challenge, which is really a challenge that is supposed to make you a little bit more stressed out. It is supposed to challenge you and create uncomfortable situations. And many times that I've done that, I've done it twice. I was in moments where it was like, I was literally running from a workout to another appointment and my schedule felt really tight. And I was actually stressed out because I was adding more things in my schedule, because I was having to take more bathroom breaks, all the things.
Because you're drinking so much water.
Yeah, literally. And I literally was adding more stress to my life. But at the same time, I wasn't looking at that as bad stress. I didn't attach a bad feeling or connotation to that word, because what I knew going into that challenge was that by doing hard things and leveling myself up in those areas, I was actually going to grow and become a better person, and I was going to have positive results. And so my thought process behind it made me feel different about it. And stress wasn't a bad thing. So we can actually make stress our friend if we think about it differently. It's the way we think about it that makes it good or bad, like pretty much any circumstance, situation, or word that we use. And so that's kind of the foundation of this. But as far as the 6 strategies, I think the first thing is it's all about kind of the expectations that you create in your own mind about whatever it is that you are quote unquote stressed out about, whether it's your business or a relationship or whatever else it might be, is that you have to have a fundamental understanding and acceptance that you are going to face difficulties. Yes. All entrepreneurs do, all humans do. And so first and foremost, don't have an expectation that everything's always going to be rainbows and butterflies, because it's not. And most of the time is our expectation of how things are going, or we want them to go, or how we think they should go, that creates our suffering, not the actual reality of it. And so we have to stop expecting things that probably aren't realistic. We have to stop comparing ourselves to what we think other people are going through, because that's not even true in the first place. And we have to have a true understanding and acceptance that we are going to face these difficulties. Every entrepreneur does, every person does, every mom does, every whatever does. And that is like a fundamental belief system that we have to accept and understand, so we don't set ourselves up for more suffering.
I love that, Cari, because suffering really comes from a place of when your expectations aren't met. And here's the opposite spectrum of that, always expecting or anticipating that something's going to go wrong. So we have, the one person who expects everything to go right, and then when it doesn't go right or it doesn't match their blueprint, then they're disappointed. Right? They're let down. That causes suffering in and of itself. But what about the person who always has an expectation that it's going to go wrong? And so because of that, they're fearful of even trying, right? It's that paralysis through analysis, right?
Yeah.
So they don't even want to try because they're so afraid of the failure. They're afraid of the rejection or even letting themselves down, or they have this concept that if they're not perfect, then and they can't show up as being perfect, then they don't want to show up at all. So really having those types of expectations can be bad in both spectrums, right? So like Cari said, being able to understand and accept, surrender to the fact that you will face difficulty, there will be challenges, and that's why we want to make sure that you're prepared. We want to make sure that you have a contingency plan, that you are prepped, that you have a mentor or a coach or someone that you can rely on to have these conversations with, because Cari, no one's alone, right? No one's
No.
alone in this journey of entrepreneurship.
Right.
We'll talk about that later on in another episode about surrounding yourself with the right people. But the reality is that it would be so much more comforting for you if you don't have expectations of meeting
Either
whatever
way.
blueprint, whatever blueprint you have.
Yeah, because the reality is that is creating that stress. Like we're thinking about something and creating a stress that probably doesn't have to even be there.
Right.
And instead of anticipating the worst or expecting the best and it not matching up, if we just understand and accept the reality, then we can take on that stress in a positive way, because we're expecting that, like, look, every entrepreneur goes through it. It's okay. It's actually where I grow. I will get through it. Stress can become my friend if I use it to channel it and help it motivate me, get into action, try new things, and grow as a human being and a business owner. And that's just a mindset shift that we all should go through, because that is the fundamental difference between good stress and bad stress in our lives and what comes from that. So the second strategy that we came up with, Haley, is really focusing on solving the problem rather than focusing on who did it, what happened,
or becoming the victim.
Yeah. Who do I blame, or woe is me? And you're going to be so much more likely to actually find a solution and feel empowered if you move into problem solving and solution mode versus becoming hopeless in the moment of a situation because you're blaming and giving the power to someone else. When you become a victim, you give the power to something and then you say, I have no control over it. So the victim mentality is a very bad mentality, not only just because it makes you, not go looking for solutions. It makes you wallow in the problem, but really where it's so detrimental is it creates a hopeless feeling, which is something that we don't know and we're not intending it to do, but it does. And so if we really want to be empowered, if we want to have the energy to go into solution mode as an entrepreneur or a human being in any situation in our life, we've got to stop saying that it was done to me. We have to stop blaming someone else and giving that power up. We got to take the power back and get ourselves into that place of empowerment. And the only way you can do that is focusing on solving the problem and focusing on what you can do and what you can control, which we talk about all the time, right?
Yes. And I want to point out too that, even coaching all of the admin that I coach, this is something that I really, really want to focus on. We talk about this in a segment that I teach around ownership, owning the role, owning your mistakes, holding yourself accountable. When we come from a place of curiosity and when we come from a place of solving the problem, there isn't room for blame. There isn't room for blame. There are so many things that are outside of our control. There are things that we can control, such as not becoming the victim. And when you have an admin and a deadline isn't met, or a project isn't being created the way that you expected it to, or there's lack of communication, or you're just like disappointed in some way, as an entrepreneur or someone who is leading a team of people or an admin, you want to make sure that you're coming from a place of curiosity. How did this happen? How can we prevent it from happening again? Rather than placing blame on the agent or your admin or yourself, what we want to do is own it, accept it, and then come from a place of how can we solve it? What were the roadblocks? How could we have made this better? Everything that happens to us is an opportunity to learn and to grow. So coming from that mindset will certainly help in building your resilience as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it.
So the third principle that we want to talk about today is really just having a positive attitude. A positive attitude always wins. Like I just mentioned, there are so many things, so many circumstances that you're just unable to change, but you can change your attitude.
Yeah.
That is something that you have control over. And when you do that, you guys, you feel different. This also gets us into a different action. When we change the story that we're telling ourselves, you're changing the state of mind that you're in. Your state of mind is going to change the emotion that you're feeling. And then your emotion is going to help dictate the action or the decisions that you make based on the story that you're telling yourself. Remember, this all comes full circle. So having a positive attitude doesn't necessarily mean, like Tony Robbins always says, it's not like you're, going into your garden and you're like, oh, everything's fine. There are no weeds. Everything's perfect. No, it's being able to step into your garden and say, yeah, there are weeds here. And let's, level ourselves out. Let's be humble. And we're going to pick out the weeds one at a time. But you're positive in knowing that you can solve the problem. You can change your attitude. You're going to change the way that you approach the situation, approach the conversation. It changes everything, having a positive attitude.
Well, I mean, the thing of the matter, the point is that we can all, whether we feel positive about something or excited or enthusiastic about something, there is an actual psychology that where if you just tell yourself that you are something, that you will over time become it. And so there are people that are just like, but I'm just not positive about this. I'm not in a positive attitude. I'm not excited or enthusiastic about it. And I'm not motivated to go do it. And the one thing I always tell my coaching clients is you don't actually have to be motivated to do something. You actually just have to force yourself to do it. And then you will become motivated. And that's actually one thing that people don't realize. And so they use that as an excuse. I'm waiting to get motivated to do something. If you're waiting to get motivated to do something you've never been motivated to do before, you're probably
not going to do it.
Yeah. So, I actually was just talking to somebody about this the other day, and she was just really stressing out and thinking about stress as a negative thing and about work. And I just said, here's the thing. The way you're thinking about work is actually creating more stress than the work itself. You have to stop thinking about it as so stressful. Maybe the work itself is stressful, but wouldn't you rather move into that, not thinking about stress so that you only have to take on the stress of the job? Now you're taking on the stress of the job and the stress that your mind is putting on the job in addition, in anticipation of, and just about the whole situation. And so you've got to wake up saying, I'm excited to go to work, whether you are or not. And you need to do it frequently because eventually you will become excited to go to work. And then you have to have some actual tactics to manage your stress and to think about the stress in a positive way, to remind yourself that you're growing, you're learning, you're doing good work, all the things that come along with stress, because it's really your thinking around the stress that's making it worse. And she's actually moved into a place where she feels so much better and is able to handle her day. And it really has started in her mind, but it's not an overnight thing. And it does have to be something you do consistently.
Well, it's a journey. I mean, I think we've said this countless times, Cari. There's really no true arrival. We get to a place where we want to be, whether it's in our business, our personal life, our relationships, even how we view ourselves. We get to our goal, and then it's like, okay, well, what's next? Right? What is the next step? There's no limit to how much we can grow. Our only limit is really the limits that we put on ourselves through our limiting beliefs, the conversations we're having, who we're surrounding ourselves with. So, good point, Cari.
So what's the fourth strategy?
So our fourth strategy, I love this. It kind of circles back around to when we were talking about not being the victim. But the strategy is understanding that you are not always going to understand why things happen. So accepting that you may not have an answer. And that's really freaking challenging, right, Cari? Like even in our personal life, it's like, why did that happen to me? Why did that person say that? Or why was I rejected this way? Why didn't this person want to work with me? So we have to remember that the question that we want to ask ourselves is not, why did this happen? But what can I learn from this experience? I want to, or Tony Robbins, I know I've already mentioned him once, but this reminds me of something else that he said, which is things are not happening to you, they're happening for you. And if you can change that mindset around when bad things happen, we want to ask ourselves, like I said, what can we learn from this experience?
Yeah.
What did this happen for? How am I supposed to grow here? It just changes your whole perspective when you can approach it from this standpoint, and when you're trying to build your resilience in your business.
Yeah. I mean, one word changes everything. And it's something interesting that you said, when you ask the question, what did this happen for, instead of why did this happen to me, or, why did this happen in general, when you just literally change that one word and you add, for, instead of to me, for, what did it happen for? How is it happening to help me? What is this showing me? Then a situation actually isn't bad anymore. And so it changes it, because remember how we always talk about a situation is never good or bad. It just is. We put something bad on it if we say it's bad. So when we ask the question, why did this happen to me? It immediately moves us into, this situation is bad. I have a bad feeling about it. I'm upset about it. I'm stressed out about it. And that is not what creates resilience. What creates resilience is taking a step back and realizing it just was a situation, and it just was what it was. And so why did it happen for me? What is it trying to teach me? What is it trying to show me? What do I need to know from this experience to make me better? And in that moment, you actually don't look at that situation as bad anymore. You can actually flip it and think, gosh, I'm really grateful that happened, because I wouldn't have learned this. I couldn't have become this person. I couldn't have known this without that happening. That's a fundamental shift inside of you as a human being that will change everything in your business, in your relationships. For me, in my transformation, that's probably one of the biggest things, where I was able to not get hung up on the things that I used to think were bad and why did they happen, and just get so upset and linger on it. It's like that whole concept of having a short-term memory, right? That we've talked about before, which is like, you don't have to have a memory about something if you're not hung up on the whys and the what ifs and the how did this happen to me and all those things. That's where our mind takes us into a spiral. But when we start looking for the positives in it and what we learned and how we grew and what was it happening for, it moves us forward.
Yes, it does.
It takes us out of the wallowing. It moves us into, oh, that's why. And now I better go do this. And so that's a really, really important, I think, strategy that we should all just remember. It's not easy, but we can get in the habit of it.
Absolutely. Which brings us to our next point. And then I want to share how Cari does this really well. So the next point, or the next strategy, is listening. Listening is key, because it helps us to move into processing what is going on and then reflecting. When we're able to reflect, when we're able to take the feedback of what is being given to us and embrace it. So as an entrepreneur, if you are not asking your clients for feedback during the middle of the transaction and then again at the end of the transaction, you're missing out. You're missing out on opportunities to better yourself, better your business, your communication, and to really grow yourself. The same thing as if you have a team, or if you have admins or even VAs that are helping to support you right now. I am telling you to ask for feedback. Put that in your quarterly review with them. You might be reviewing other people, but how are you being reviewed? This is how we grow. This is how we, like I said earlier, reflect on, are we stepping into the best version of ourselves? Are we even reviewing our values as a team, the mission that we have, how much we want to grow our business? What about your financials? Do you have someone who's, quarterly or even monthly going through P&L with you? This is all feedback. And if you're not listening to what the feedback is giving you, you're definitely not going to be resilient, and you're not going to grow your business. But here's a story that I want to share about Cari that she does really, really well. There have been some challenges or things that Cari has faced in her personal life and in her business life. And one thing that I have seen her do is take these challenges and she reflects on them. And when she processes them, she comes from a place of gratitude. And I'm sure you know this about yourself, Cari, but I just want to highlight this because I think it's so magical that you're able to do this. Everything that comes into Cari's life, she's able to come from a place of gratitude and appreciation, and it doesn't prevent her from going out and trying again. Whereas me, when I first started working with Cari, I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. I'm afraid. I've never done that before. What if I say something stupid, or what if I show up and I don't really know what to say? And she's like, well, just do it anyways. Just keep doing it. Just keep making the calls. Just keep asking for the business. And if someone says no, that doesn't mean no, right? It just doesn't mean no forever. It just means no right now for them. And so Cari is such an amazing entrepreneur in this way, because she doesn't allow any of these hardships that have come her way to be negative. In fact, she just embraces them. She still shines her love and her light on people who most people would think have wronged her. No, it doesn't hold her back. It's so magical, and it's really inspiring, Cari. And I hope that you see that in yourself.
That's really sweet. Well, I've been watching your growth in 1 year, because you used to absolutely not necessarily naturally have a short-term memory and move into action again, because a lot of people don't. That's not a natural thing. But part of it was also, remember, Haley, you shared, well, gosh, just surrounding yourself with people that do that gives you the courage to do it. And then that they're not going to be upset, especially when you work together. If you're working with somebody who's worried about that all the time, then of course you're going to be, because it's reflective of how they might feel if you try to go out there, make a mistake and try again. But if you're surrounding yourself with people that do that, it gives you the courage to go do it yourself. And it's so empowering, because none of us are perfect. None of us are going to make all the right decisions. But I truly, firmly believe that everybody is they're doing the best they can at the time. I really believe that. I believe that about myself. I believe that about other people, even in the moment, if it doesn't feel like it. And so it just is what it is. It's just what happened. It just was how we responded. It just was. And yet we can then learn from it, and then we can move forward and not hold a grudge, or not feel embarrassed, or not be feeling like a failure, or any of those, negative feelings that will creep in. And so I've watched you move through that so just quickly this year. It's been just wild for me to watch. It's been really, really exciting. And sometimes when we do it ourselves, we don't really realize what we're doing. But when we see other people doing it, we're like, whoa. So remember, when you're doing this, you might not feel like you're doing crazy good things, but people are watching you.
People are watching you.
The message. Yeah.
Yeah. So that actually brings us to our 6th point, which is finding your people. Yes. And this is so incredibly important. Someone sent me a video of Steve Harvey talking last night, specifically around surrounding yourself with the right people, because there's so much uncertainty and instability in being an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. Being an entrepreneur. And when you don't have a consistent income, or when you're just starting out and you're kind of putting all your eggs into one basket, or you don't even know where to find the right people, right? It can be really scary. And when you are surrounding yourself with people who do have a salary, they've never been an entrepreneur, they've never tried anything new because of their own fear, they're projecting their fears onto you, it can be very disempowering. So, and I know a lot of times, Cari, like, these are your family members, these are your best friends, these are your siblings, other people that you're just surrounding yourself with, and it limits you. It absolutely limits you. You have to find your right people, because you're a reflection of the majority of the people who are around you. So here's another interesting thing. I've also had people say to me, like some coaching clients, everyone around me is so negative, and how do I change that? And it's like, well, you're not going to change those people. What you need to do is change yourself.
Because once change your people. You
got to change your people. You got to change your people, and you got to also change yourself, because energetically, if those people are attracted to you, you got to reflect on who you are. Like, why are those people attracted to you, right? You gotta break out. You got to free yourself. But when you start leaning in to who you want to become, it's amazing how many people start coming to you, and they want to be a part of what you're doing. You have to talk about it. You have to mastermind with them, get a coach, team members, colleagues, like reach out to people who are doing what you want to be doing, and just have a conversation with them. I think it starts there.
I agree. Have the internal conversation with yourself and then start having the conversation with others. And just because you have to change your people doesn't mean you have to totally block people out of your life. It's just that you have to realize who you're spending the most time with, what you're filling your mind with, and what conversations you're surrounding yourself with, because you actually do really grow into those conversations, whether you know it or not.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope that this was helpful for everyone. Reach out to us if you have any questions or you're looking to make connections with people. Cari and I love networking, and we're happy to make some connections for you.
Yes. Thanks, you guys, for joining us again. Happy Monday.
Folks, round of applause in your home office for Cari and Haley. Amazing as always. Be sure to join us next Monday. They are with us every Monday as we keep on leveling up together. So my friends, my name is Alyssa Specht. I'm with EXP University. Thought I'd introduce myself before we get the show going even further. So next up, we are talking the power of strategic questions. I'm so excited. We're going to be talking to Monica Weakley. Now, she's a realtor just like you. She's on the board of directors. And the board of directors, think about this. She's bringing the voice of the agent to the company. She's so amazing, and I'm such a fan. So without any further ado, let's toss it over to Monica Weakley with the power of strategic questions.
Hey everybody, it's Monica Weakley. Hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm super psyched to bring you this very short kind of mindset shift training about the power of strategic questions. And I say mindset training because I can't teach you, nobody can teach you every single question that you need to ask, because we're having live interactions with sellers and buyers and potential sellers and buyers. So the idea of this training today is really just to give you a mindset shift about how you're showing up in your client interactions. P.S. This is really cool in every aspect of your life too. I have found that my personal relationships are way better when I'm in question mode, coming from curiosity instead of telling, selling, using words like you should. I want us all to agree today, we are never going to say you should again. We're not going to should on anybody, okay? We're going to quit that. It is not very powerful if you're trying to influence, whether it be a friend or family member or a client. If you're trying to influence, it is important to understand that that influence is way more powerful when they self-discover it. And the way you help them self-discover is through the power of strategic questions. And look, not all of us are going to be great at questions right out of the gate. I'm going to be here to tell you the only reason I'm teaching this class is because I was horrible. I mean, absolutely horrible at it. In fact, at a coaching retreat, my coach called me out in front of the entire group because all I wanted to do was respond with answers and tell. And I was trying to be a coach. And that's just no way to affect change in people and to influence people. So my hope for you today is that at the end of this short training, that you will simply walk away with just a different frame of mind. Now we have to be super aware of this before we enter into a conversation, because our default is just to give answers. We think that's how we impress people. That's how we show our knowledge. Look, we were raised as kids never to question anybody, weren't we? Oh, don't question authority. Don't question. No more questions. Stop asking questions. And I'm here to tell you that that programming is not serving you. You're not asking enough questions. You're not consulting enough. You're worried about the right answers and showing how much you know. And it's not the way to do what you're trying to do, which is to create a business of consulting and solving problems and helping people recognize the path that's best for them. Look, the reality is we don't sell anything, do we? I mean, we call it selling houses, but you're not selling anybody a house. You're guiding them through this process and keeping them safe. Well, in order to do that, we need to understand some things. And the only way to understand is to ask questions. A mentor of mine once said, in any interaction, I want you guys to write this down. In any interaction, whether it be business or personal, the person who talks the most thinks it went the best, and the person who asked the questions was in charge. Okay? In any interaction, personal or business, the person who talked the most thinks it went the best, and the person who asked the questions was in charge. I want you to be in charge all the time. And that means you're going to stop answering questions on the first question. We're going to get into this mode, and it takes practice, guys. I get it. We get into this mode of asking a clarifying question every single time you're asked a question. That's going to take some practice, trust me. I want to give you a story that I think will drive this point home a little bit. I have a friend, her name's Mitzi, and she tells a story of being in an elevator, a really tall building, an elevator at some event. And she got up in the elevator up high, and a gentleman was on the elevator already. And she said hello, and they began a conversation, and she just asked him questions. And as the elevator dropped down and people got on and off, they continued this conversation. And she's great at asking questions. She's a former coach and actually still coaches. And she was just asking him all kinds of questions, and she found out all these things about him. And when the elevator dropped to the bottom floor and the doors opened and everybody got off, he said, "Hey, tell me your name again." And she said, "My name's Mitzi." He says, "Well, you are one of the most interesting people I've talked to in a while." She didn't say anything about herself. All she did was ask him questions, and his perception of her was how interesting she was. Yes, you know this to be true, and yet we still want to just dump all over people, all of our information, and some of us are even nervous about going on appointments because we don't know what to say. What if they ask us something we don't know? All those things. Well, I'm here to kind of relieve that a little bit today. I want to share with you, I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm a real estate agent just like you. Been selling for over 20 years. I also coach and train agents all around the country. And I'm super happy to be affiliated with EXP and all the incredible things that are going on here. And our leadership team, especially Glenn, I mean, this is amazing. So a long time ago, I was actually consulting with a buyer who came to me, and we were going through the buyer consultation process, which I hope each and every one of you is doing no matter what. There's not a single exception to that. And a buyer consultation is a series of questions, right? So I was going through that process, and we were to the part where you ask about beds and baths and what's important, what's the minimum kind of situation there. And the person said, "Oh, and I need a formal dining room." Okay. Now, 9 out of 10, maybe 10 out of 10 agents is just going to write that down, formal dining room. And if your MLS allows it, you would go ahead and check that box. But I want you to take this example to heart, because I stopped right there and said, "Awesome. Tell me more about that." That's the question. It's not even a question, is it? This is a statement. Awesome. Tell me more about that. It's a clarifying statement, if you will. So this particular client says, "I do family dinners every single week. My whole family comes over, and it's super important that we all can sit around the same table. This is something that we like and is important to us." I said, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool. How big is your family? Tell me how long you've been doing this." And everybody lives here. And it gave me a minute to get to know them a little better through questions. So I kind of had the dynamics in my mind. And I said to her, "So if this home had space to extend a table or have a big table, but it wasn't in a formal dining room setting, is that okay? Or does it need to be a formal dining room setting?" And she says, "Oh my gosh, no, we just need a place where we can all sit around the table." Okay, so can you imagine if I hadn't asked those questions and all I did was put in a formal dining room as a criteria in the MLS search? Can you imagine how many houses we may have missed out on that would have otherwise maybe been perfect for her? So it's our job to dig a little on these basic criteria, even beds and baths. Tell me why that's important to you. Tell me why that's important to you. Tell me a little bit more about that, right? Because they don't maybe understand the implications of putting in too many, criterion points and then eliminating some houses that would otherwise be perfect, okay? So questions are really the only way to discover the real problem the real concern, or the real priority? Write those three down. Problem, concern, or priority. Questions are really the only way to discover the real concern, the real problem, the real priority. And addressing those problems, concerns, and priorities is the only way for you to be successful with the client. It's the only way for you to succeed, to influence, and to win them over, solve the problem, and then to get all the referrals that you need from that client forever, because you were the problem solver and the hero of the story, right? All right. So I want to dive into just a few samples of questions. Hopefully you understand why questions are so important. And the homework that you have is to, every time now somebody asks you a question, I don't care if it's at your house, out to dinner with friends, or in a client scenario, every time somebody asks you a question, I want you to refrain from answering it and ask a clarifying question. Okay? Now, obviously, there's some exceptions to that. All right. If somebody needs to know where the bathroom is, you don't need to clarify. Just tell them where the bathroom is, right? All right. So I'm going to just pull up. You're not going to see it, but I just want to make sure I get my notes right here. I'm going to pull up the top 4 buyer questions that I like that are unique a little bit. Of course, there are standard questions, and you know what they are. I just want you to worry about going 1 or 2 or even 3 levels deep on your question. Well, tell me more about that. Gosh, I'd love to understand why that's so important to you. Did you have an experience somewhere else where that was important to you? Those kinds of things. Those are obviously basic questions. They're basic consulting questions. But here are 4 questions that I've found to be really enlightening and to open up great conversation and great trust. And these 4 are with a buyer, okay? The first one is sort of what we already talked about. Ooh, I love that. Would you mind sharing with me why that's important to you? And you're going to go 2 or 3 times deep with that, all right? They tell you something they want or something they hope for. Oh my gosh, I love that. Tell me, would you mind sharing why that's important to you? Okay? Now, this next one is one of my favorite all-time buyer questions. It actually works for sellers too. And that is this. How do you make decisions? Tell me, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, individually, how do each of you make decisions? And I'll usually prompt them with, are you a gut feel kind of gal? Or are you an analyzer? Are we going to have to put spreadsheets together for you and have square footage analysis? Or are you just going to know the house when you see it? And usually the couple laughs at each other, right? Because there's always one gut feel person, and then there's always one, over analyzer, got to put the spreadsheet together. But that question alone, and would you write that down? How do you make decisions? Man, does it open up conversation? Because if you're in a segment of the market where we're still having a lot of competition and we're in multiple offers, do we need to talk about the fact that there's not going to be any time to put this spreadsheet together, and sometimes numbers aren't going to make sense in this market? Yes, we're going to need to have that conversation up front. Super important in setting expectations. And that's part of what asking the right questions are, is so that you can understand where they're coming from, so that you can massage that information and set the expectation. And we as agents just aren't doing a good job of this. We take things so literal, and beds and baths and square footage, and I want to see this house, and okay, I'll meet you, and that's it. And then we wonder why our lives are so difficult in the middle of the deal. We didn't establish ourselves as a leader. We didn't establish a process. We didn't care to dive deeper into their concerns, problems, etc., right? So really important. So number 3, my favorite buyer question is, if we were to find a house that was otherwise perfect, but it didn't have X, like whatever they're talking about, it didn't have a fenced in yard, would you still buy it? Oh, yeah. That is a way that you can eliminate putting that criteria into the MLS, which then, of course, casts a bigger net. I want as little information in the MLS as possible for their search, so that the net that we cast is bigger and that they have more to say no to. If you put in beds, baths, price point, has to have a flat backyard with a fence yard, and it must have this basement and this. You're really going to eliminate a lot of things that we know they probably would buy anyway. So the question is, if we were to find the perfect house that was otherwise perfect, but didn't have that fenced yard or that finished basement, would you still be willing to look at it? 9 times out of 10, it's, yeah, we could always finish the basement. If it had everything else, yeah, sure, we could finish the basement. Oh yeah, if it had everything else, sure, we could add a garage out back. Whatever, okay? Really important to clarify that. Now, the fourth question for the buyers that I love is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to buy a home in the next 60 days? 10 is, I have to buy a home. There is no option. I must buy a home in the next 60 days. That's a 10. All right. I love, on a scale of 1 to 10 questions. I ask them all the time. They're they actually prompt nice discussions because you can clarify the number. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to buy a home in the next 60 days? 10 mean you have to, there is no option. And listen to what they say. They'll say, oh, probably an 8. I mean, we really want to, but we don't have to. Okay, great. What would prevent you from buying a home? What would happen where that wouldn't happen? And also, you can make sure both parties, if there are 2 decision makers, are on the same page. I can't tell you how many times I ask them to actually hold up the numbers behind their back, and so that they both show them at the same time. And, one partner is a 3 and the other one's a 9. And we need to have that discussion right now. And sometimes I'll just send them off to have that discussion that night. Hey guys, we got to both be on the same page. As you can imagine, this process will be a little difficult if one partner is not on board, which I totally respect, full respect on that, right? Okay, so those are the 4 buyer questions. Would you mind sharing with me why that's important? How do you make decisions? If we were to find a house that was otherwise perfect but didn't have X, would you still be willing to buy it? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to make a move in the next 60 days? See, I have a standard in my business right now is we're not working with buyers that aren't an 8, 9, or 10. We're just not. It's too difficult. So you have to have standards in your business, and these questions help to reveal whether the client is right for your business. Okay? Make sense? All right. Now let's talk about the top 4 seller questions. Top 4 seller questions. These are good. I like these. All right. Here's another scale of 1 to 10 question. Number 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being HGTV perfect or Architectural Digest perfect, how would you rate your home? Then listen, because and this is generally a pre-qualification question. This isn't being asked at the kitchen table. This is being asked as you're doing your research, getting ready to come over to the appointment. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being HGTV perfect, how would you rate your home? Now, what the seller is going to sit there and tell you is everything that they think is wrong with the house. And this is going to become so valuable because you're going to reference that list that they said, not you. All right. There's a follow-up question, which is, what would it take to make it a 10? And they're also going to describe everything that they think that is less than or subpar. Really powerful question. You must be asking this question as a pre-qualification to the meeting. Okay. Number 2, how honest would you like me to be with you through this process? Yeah, sounds weird, right? How honest would you like me to be with you through this process? Now, we all know they're going to say, oh my gosh, we want you to be totally honest. They're going to laugh and there'll be some kind of joke around this, and it's fine. It'll break the ice a little bit. But I always ask this question because I want to reference back to their answer. Hey, earlier you mentioned that you really wanted me to be fully honest with you. Would you mind if I was honest with you about something that we're talking about? Okay. You're just getting permission to be honest. And that's really important. All right. Number 3, what is it, if anything, about moving stresses you out the most? All right. This is where you're going to separate yourself from other agents that are just doing the tactile motions, right? This is where you become a human being. And this is where you can take extra care of your clients. And this is where you can stand out. And that human being aspect of real estate is what makes the difference, doesn't it? And I bet most everybody watching this wants to show up that authentically and that organically, and that you understand that being a human being first, realtor second, is what actually makes for a great business. That's what makes for a great business. So what, if anything, about moving stresses you out the most? And just listen to them, and listen to each of them, and ask clarifying questions. Oh, really? Tell me about that. Sounds like maybe you had an experience with that last time. Have you had that experience before? Or sounds like that's coming from a story, or, sounds like there's a story there, or whatever, right? Okay. What concerns you the most? What confuses you the most? You don't have to say stresses out. What, if anything, stresses you out, concerns you, or confuses you the most about this idea of a move? And you're going to find out all their little vulnerable spots, and you're going to be able to take care of that or watch out for that. Okay? Very important. The fourth seller question that I love to ask is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to sell your home? Here, we gotta know motivation again. All right? 10 being, I have to sell this home, I have no option. So it's the same as the buyer question, but scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, we must sell. How motivated are you to sell? Gotta ask these questions. And guys, there's probably 50, 100 other questions like this. These questions are meant to get your brain thinking like this a little differently. Look for these opportunities to ask clarifying questions that come from curiosity. That's really what we're doing. When you can solve their problem, you will earn the business. But you can't solve the problem unless you understand 3 levels deep what the problem is. 3 levels deep. See, you just want to answer the first question that comes your way. Hey, will you reduce your commission? And you just want to answer it. I want you to ask, tell me why that's important to you. Tell me more about that. Sounds like you've talked to somebody about commission rates. Help me understand that a little bit more. Are you really interested in what I make, or is it more about you capturing and earning the most amount of money and getting the most equity out of your house? Is that really what it's about? Yeah, of course that's what it's about. Not about what I keep. They're asking that question because they want to make the most amount of money. We'll solve that problem for you, and they'll never ask you about your commission. Solve that problem for them. Okay? Sound good? All right, the last set of questions, and then we're going to end today. These are just general questions that I like, that I've asked over time, that have really given me great responses and important information. They can be asked generally of anyone, although this first one has to do more with sellers. The first question is, all right, guys, you're at the kitchen table. Let's say they're downsizing, right? Do you have a favorite memory or two of this house, your time in this house? Gosh, you raised your kids in this house. Do you have a favorite memory in this house? Ooh, human being stuff. Red alert, you're not the average agent, right? You have a favorite memory. What that question does for me, first of all, allows me to show up like a human being, like I want to, but also it gives me a great thoughtful gifting opportunity. They're like, oh my gosh, yeah, our kids, we always used to do dance party Sundays, and we'd put on music and dance, and oh man, am I gonna, I don't know, gift something around that, some sort of disco ball, or maybe just a little ornament that's a disco ball that they can hang on their tree in their condo that they're downsizing to, right? Or maybe they have great card tournaments at their house. Oh my gosh, we used to play cards all the time, whatever. So I'm going to go get a picture of their family or a picture of the house and put it on a deck of cards and give them a custom deck of cards for that. So great opportunity to do thoughtful gifting and just human being stuff in that question. The second question is there any part of this move that's creating more stress or concern than others? That's similar to the other question, but that can be asked of buyers too. Hey, is there any part of this process that's giving you, more concern or more stress than others? You really just want them to open up, because if you're not aware of what's going on underneath the surface, you can't really be that full-blown consultant, that partner in the process. Partners know everything that's going on with them, as much as they'll let you in, obviously. Okay, the third question. I love this question. How does somebody win with you Or how does somebody lose with you? I love asking my clients this. Hey, I really appreciate this opportunity. I love your house. Your house is amazing. I would be honored to help you get this house sold. Before we make a decision, I'd like to know from you, how does somebody win with you? What does that look like? And contrary to that, how does somebody lose with you? When you can understand that about somebody, does it help navigate the process a little bit? Yes, because you know what's sensitive to them. What might be important to me is not important to somebody else. And what, causes you to lose with me might not cause you to lose with somebody else. You've got to understand this. You're serving them at the highest level in a big, giant investment. This is important. This is important. Our work is important. All right. So I want us to show up not as order takers. I want us to show up as like the best doctor you've ever had, the best attorney you've ever had. And what doctors and attorneys do best is ask great questions and consult and come from curiosity and understand 3 levels deep. Okay. The fourth question, the last question today is this is a good one, guys. You're going to want to write this down. What makes this experience a 10 out of 10 for you? What makes this, we're all done, everything's good. What makes this experience a 10 out of 10? Let them talk, all right? And then I want you to say something to the effect of this. Is it okay if I check in with you throughout the process to make sure I'm hitting that 10? And if I'm able to hit that number along the way, would you be excited about referring me to your friends and family? What? How good is that? All right, let me ask it again. Hey, what makes this experience a 10 out of 10 for you? Let me know. How do we knock it out of the park for you? Let them talk. All right, great. Is it okay with you if I periodically check in with you throughout the process? And if I'm able to hit a 10 all along the way, would you be excited about referring me to your friends and family? You're going to get a confirmation from them. And that's where an obligation becomes concrete. Now they're obligated to. They said they would. And as long as you deliver on your 10 out of 10, you will find yourself accruing referrals very easily. Imagine hitting a 10 out of 10 for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 homes that you sell in a year. And you have that discussion with each of them. That's good for a referral, 2, 3, 4 perhaps, right? More maybe. Okay, that is the power of strategic questions. Are you thinking differently? Are you looking back on how you interact with sellers and buyers and saying, "Ooh, I think I talk too much. I'm not asking clarifying questions. I'm not showing up like a consultant. I don't really understand what's going on underneath the surface with my clients. I'm just doing the job," right? I hope you got that out of today. If you ever want to ask any other questions, you can always reach out to me on Workplace or I'm on Facebook, and happy to help anytime. Thank you so much.
Give it up for Monica Weakley. That was fire. Thank you so much for being on the show. You are welcome back anytime. That was so good. All right. So, my friends, we're going to keep on rolling with today. And on this Mastery Monday, let me ask you a question. Do you dread follow-up? Do you find it really hard to be consistent and persistent with it? Yeah, that's me raising my hand. I struggle immensely with it. And we're bringing you this next session because we are asking ourselves, what do our agents need right now? And so this session is going to help you with your follow-up. And let's actually think about this as a part 2 session. We had Sara Delansig on, and we had her on last Wednesday. So check it out. Go to the eXp Realty YouTube channel. Make sure that you like, subscribe while you're there. And then check out the first segment of this talking about follow-up. It's really going to help you out. And I think this one is too. So this next session, we're talking about making follow-up fun. And I love this because I am incredibly fun-minded. I need to have a way to gamify things to keep my mind interested in it. And that is what we're bringing for you today. So with making follow-up fun, let's toss it over to Sara Delansig.
XP family, this is Sara Delansig. I am really excited to share with you all some games that you can play while prospecting. And I know it sounds weird. Some of this will work for solo agents. Some of it will work if you are in a group, on a team of ISAs, a team of, accountability partners. Some of it will work differently, but I will kind of point out what works and how we use it and how you can have fun with it. But keep that in mind. And this is just stuff that I actually did. So some of it, not all of it, but I'll give you some stories and we'll talk about it. And hopefully it will give you some motivation to get out there and make some phone calls. Okay. So number one follow-up game that you can play is based off of statistics, and it is called the candy jar. And how it works is that every time somebody tells you no, or they have an agent, or they're not interested, or they hang up on you or something like that, you take a piece of candy and you put it into a jar, and you have a clear jar in front of you. And the motivation behind it is that statistically, the more no's you get, then you'll eventually get a yes. So let's just say you have to get 10 no's to get to the 11th yes, right? And actually, there was a really good example of this that somebody sent me recently that Grant Cardone and his daughter posted on Instagram. And it was really cool because his daughter's sitting there making calls, and I've actually had my son do it too. But anyway, I thought it was so cool because she sounded so awesome. She's going to be great. But also she is calling to invite people to a real estate event that he's putting on, which is exactly how I got started too, which I thought was so fun. But she's calling to invite them to a real estate event he's putting on. It's $4,000 ticket. If he pays her 10%, that's $400. And she makes 18 phone calls and gets one sale. And so he says to her, well, you actually made, it was $22 per call. Every call you made got you to that $400. Now, if you look at it that way, the same thing with the candy jar. Statistically, every call you make makes you money as long as you keep doing it, because eventually, statistically, you're going to get a yes. And when you get to that yes, it's cumulative and it makes up for all of those other no's. And so you have to go through the no's to get to the yes, right? So that's how the candy jar works. It fills up and hey, and your mindset is telling you that means anytime now. And usually your mindset will actually make it even more powerful so that you will actually get an appointment and get a closing. So I thought that was pretty cool. All right. Next up, I have KPI rewards. This is incredibly motivating. Team leaders, hear me on this. Okay. When I sold real estate coaching, we had a sorry, my Alexa's going off. We had a TV screen on the wall. We were all lined up, a bunch of ISAs, and we were all lined up with our laptops, making phone calls with our headsets and everything, right? And we were competing against each other to see who could set the most appointments. And whoever set the most appointments would then the following day get the hottest leads, and the hottest leads meant the biggest commission, and so on. So I almost never called in sick because of this. So the fact that I could see where I stood, I wanted to end the day ahead of everyone else, because I knew that if I was at the top of the leaderboard, that I was going to get the $500 that came with it, if there was a closing, right? So that was really, really motivating to me, to the point where myself and some of the other ISAs would sit there and go back and forth. And if I would hear her setting an appointment, then I would stay later to one up her, and so on and so forth. So we visualize it, we can see it, we compete with each other. But there's also, I've heard of people who have teams that will reward whoever set the most appointments with something like a fully loaded Tesla. So, I mean, that's pretty motivating as well. And they do this like once a year, which is a really cool idea. So that's how KPI rewards work. It's basically like showing somebody where they stand, helping them to be competitive, and helping them to bring the best out of themselves so that they will be motivated to continue making the calls and getting the appointments. Okay. The next one is called Ring That Bell. And it's very similar to what I was just talking about, actually. Another thing that we did when we were all working in an office together and making calls together is that we would let everybody know when we got a closing. So as a matter of fact, the person that I worked for, he wanted like a disco ball to come down. It was going to be built into this office, but I don't think it never happened while I was there. Anyway, I don't think it ever happened. But, you know, if somebody got a closing, then the disco ball would come down and they would like say their name on the screen and all this stuff. And so everybody would see, hey, that's possible, you know? So it's called Ring That Bell. And basically, if you get an appointment, if you get a closing, you ring a bell and you let people know. So you announce it. And so you see that it's possible. And so then you believe that you can do it. And that is what is really cool about Ring That Bell. Okay, the next one, this is a really fun one. You can play this by yourself or with a team. It's called the word game. And well, actually, you would probably need somebody else to tell you what word you need to say on the call. And you got to be careful with this. Okay, let's use appropriate words. It could be something like aardvark. But essentially, we would challenge each other while making cold calls to try to say a specific word on that call, like aardvark or Hogwarts or, you know, whatever you could come up with. And so you would go around. And so if somebody got, you know, a live person on the phone, then we would know what word they're supposed to say. And if they didn't say it, you know, then they'd have to buy people coffee or something like that. But if they did say it, then we just keep going until somebody can't do it. So that is how the word game works. And it makes you excited for people to actually pick up the phone, which is motivating. So you can do it by yourself. Just, you know, pick, you know, maybe write down some words and think, if I get on this call, I'm going to try to fit this in here. But obviously it can be difficult to bring up. And I was terrible at this game. I really wasn't good at all. But I was pretty good at the next one, which was accent improv. And accent improv, this is only for ISAs or somebody calling on behalf of someone else. Because you don't want to do a whole transaction with a fake accent. And what I'll say about this one is, what we do, I loved calling Texas when we sold real estate coaching, and I would call all over the country, but Texas, they would always pick up the phone. They were so nice, and they always had like a little twang in their, you know, they had an accent to me, right? So I would throw a little twang into my voice, and it was, you know, sometimes it was hit or miss, but it was fun because then, you know, you can just, some of the people I work with swore that if you did that, then it, you know, they were more likely to set an appointment or something like that. But I don't know about that. I think just being authentic and people who need it will want it and stuff like that. But I thought it was cool and it was kind of fun. So you can try that at your own risk. Okay. And the final one, it can be done anybody can do this one. This is really fun, and you can adjust it based on what you're hearing and all of that. And it is prospecting bingo. I absolutely love prospecting bingo because this was a way that I used to motivate my team of ISAs, and I would hand them a bingo sheet that was empty, and we would try to, you know, black it out. And if somebody got a bingo or something like that, I would give them like a $20 gift card. And basically on it would say things like, you know, in the middle would be like booked appointment, right? But around that would be like, oh, I accidentally clicked on it. I didn't mean to, it was an accident. How about, oh, there's so many I can think of, like, oh, you've got the wrong number, right? Hang up on you. There's like, just, you know, all the things. Oh, I'm waiting till the interest rates go down, right? So anything that you are told throughout the day while you're making your phone calls, basically you can check it off. And if somebody got a bingo, this was a way that I motivated my team. So team leaders, I highly recommend you use this. And in my workplace group, which there should be like a little dinosaur that you can scan at the end of this. But you can also find it, you could just search workplace. It's called Inside Sales Agents General, and it's really more about follow-up. It's not just for ISAs or inside sales agents. But I share a prospecting bingo sheet. You can make your own in Canva. It's super easy. But I hope you guys will check it out and you'll have fun with these games and not be so afraid of making some calls and connecting with some humans about their home search. So thank you so much. My name is Sara Delansig. Again, find me in workplace. inside sales agents general.